to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Well, here we are. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta. I am the Quiet Warrior. And today we're live streaming, taping a special interview with Layne Ihde. Now he's standing by there. You can see him, but we're not going to bring him on just as yet. I want to let you know that live streaming, basically we're interrupting the airwaves across 3 social media platforms, but we will produce this into an international podcast and a YouTube premiere, which will come out in the near future. So without further ado, this show is all about you, Layne Ihde. I'd like to welcome you to the Quiet Warrior Show.
Thank you for having me, Tom. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's not very often that I have somebody on my show, and in the back of my mind, I have an image of a cat. And, well, let me just say that I'm going to ask you a fun question. Tell us one thing about yourself that you think many people, including cats, don't know about you.
Something that people don't know about. I am so weird. I mean, one of the reasons that your show captivated me was when I was reading the tagline of "Let Your Freak Flag Fly." I do so many things. I don't know if it's things that people don't know, but you don't know it until you meet me. And I don't realize I do this. Did you ever see the show Ally McBeal? It was back, I don't know, years ago. But anyway, it was about this girl that worked at a law firm, but like she would end up saying or doing the things that most of us think in our heads and we never do. And I kind of do that. Like I've had day jobs where I'm talking to myself or I'm singing a song or I'm doing something and I'm completely unaware that I'm actually broadcasting that to everyone else. And people are just like looking at me like, so I guess that's one thing. Well, what's something else that cats or other people would not know? I like to take baths. I mean, that's not a very masculine thing, and I don't care. I love to take baths. And only my wife knows that, I think. So,
well, I'm glad she's the only lady that knows that next to your mother. All right, now we can already tell that this show is going to have me cracking up. But I'm going to read your bio now because I want the audience to get the greatness behind you, because already they're probably thinking, what's this crackpot on your show all about? I want to follow my own ego, checked it at the door, and say that these muscles on my face don't work that well, because I was born a serious guy who doesn't smile very much, but in the first minute, nobody's had me laugh like this. And by the way, man, I gave you the question one thing, and I've never had anybody search for 2. I mean, we know you want the microphone, but most people get it.
Do you see how big my microphone is right here?
I see that. Most people struggle with finding one thing, but thank you so much. So a little bit about this man, Layne Ihde. He tells stories. He's written and published 40 songs while fronting 3 different indie rock bands, releasing 3 albums, 2 EPs domestically and internationally on independent labels in Japan and England. There's a connection. I was born in England and my daughter-in-law is from Japan. Getting placement on television shows and performing across the country. I just want to add more to that Layne writes and performs as 1/3 of the kids and family rock band, the Happy Racers. That's being played at Lincoln Center, Wolftrap, and headline Pilgrimage Music Festival in Franklin, Tennessee. And he's received many awards. I think the most exciting thing for me is you're on the show, not just to have fun, but telling us about a new book that's coming out called Pippin No Lickin. There it is. That's pretty exciting. And, I read that book today, and I actually went on Amazon and posted a review for you. And I got to tell you that I grew up reading a lot of children's books, and that one stole part of my heart. It was fun. So let's get into your story. You know that this is about the struggles and the successes in life behind extraordinary people. Take us back to where it began. I mean, some people start right at the day they were born.
Well, and that's true. As far as the musical journey, it did start probably before I was born. My mom is a very good singer. She has just this beautiful alto, contralto, like it's the lower voice for women. And I have no doubt, and she's told me, she sang to me in the womb. And so I just kind of came out listening for melodies and matching pitch and doing that. She was never a professional musician, but she sang in the church choir and would solo a lot. So yeah, really from childhood, I came out singing, and then plunking around on the piano, plunking melodies. I remember listening to, um, one of the things I miss is that TV shows don't have theme songs anymore. Do you remember when you were a kid, TV said, I would listen to theme songs like the A-Team and Airwolf and whatever it is, and I would plunk those melodies out on the piano. And then when I got older, I started playing trumpet in fifth grade band. And then around 16 or 17, I started messing around on the guitar, eventually went to Taylor University in Indiana to study music, moved to Nashville. And but all during that time, I also wrote stories. So that's kind of the seg from music into stories. But music is stories too, and I want to make that clear. You know, even if you're playing a solo, like you're improvising a solo in jazz and it doesn't have lyrics, you're still telling a story. If you've got these notes, this order of notes that you're presenting and you're trying to connect with your audience, you're telling a story. And so that's one of those things. My brain works 5,000 nano so fast, you're probably telling this. But I want to connect that with, I just finished your book, which is amazing, and I'm going to be doing a review on it soon. And when you talk about analyzing yourself and getting at the core of who you are, and we'll talk about this, but went through many, many struggles with music, and then recently just became a published children's author. But I realized, what's the common thread through it all? And it's that I love stories. I love reading stories, watching stories, and telling stories. And so
well, let me jump in there and let you catch your breath there. I wrote down, as you know, I turned my head here on the video. People who listen to the podcast won't see that, but I'm not bored with you, by the way.
I hope not.
I am making notes because my brain is three-dimensional. I've been told that I go from each quadrant, and when you say something, I tend to riff on it in my head, and I go on a journey, which is kind of crazy. Too. Yeah, so I think that's why we will get along so well. I want to talk about some connections. I grew up not being a great musician, but in school, you know, you were given the recorder, and gosh, I mean, oh my gosh. But of all instruments I chose to play, and I was this chubby, chunky kid. You probably saw a little bit of my book, and that's where my self-conscious mind went. But I chose the tuba. And now, so there's me lugging, and we lived about a half mile away from school, a huge tuba on my back in a case to school and back every day. And I would play that thing with that mouthpiece, and my lips would be numb. I couldn't even feel them. And I was just so excited that I could go, and I called but later in life, and I don't know if you ever heard any of Glenn Campbell's music. Glenn Campbell, being a country superstar, passed away from sadly dementia, Alzheimer's, I think. There is a YouTube, Layne, that if you want to get into the story, that one, you probably connect because of the guitar thing, because I started playing guitar because of him. He actually performed right up to the last minute on stage having Alzheimer's dementia, and he actually forgot in performances part of his songs. And everybody around him, he would lose it sometimes, get angry, but everybody loved him. He was a personality like you, a big smile and very gregarious. But why did I go there? I don't know. When you said guitar, I had acoustic guitar and I started riffing on it. And that's when I realized the truth of what you said, man, and that I escaped through playing music. But what I didn't realize is that you said about the theme songs. I grew up with a military commanding officer father. And you read my book, you know, he was a bad dude, but he was really a hero later in life. And I watched MASH, the longest running series. And I remember that theme that haunts me, suicide is painless. But attached to that, and I'll give it back to you and ask you to talk about this, attached to that song in my subconscious are events of my life. I can't hear that song without going back into the trauma of my childhood. And so I used to find songs that I could hook onto that brought joy and happiness. And what your mom said to you, singing to you in the womb, I really believe that the neurons in our brains are empty when we're born, but there is truth that if you're singing, your mom's singing to you, you're actually recording that even at that or later stage of pregnancy. Somehow that's embedding it into your subconscious. Anyway, I'll give it back to you. Tell me more about, you said struggles. Tell me one of your biggest struggles and how music actually became, sort of your drug.
Well, first of all, I just want to say you're exactly correct. I am right along those lines with the neurons. I believe that in that probably that later stage of pregnancy, I really did internalize my mom singing to me, and that, whether that's genetics or whatever already, or she was training me to develop the ear that I have now. But as far as music, I actually kind of gave you the run up from childhood up until college and post college, and that actually hits right up into the answer that I'll give you for the struggles. So I moved to Nashville in 1996, which, man, part of me, I think of that, I'm like, that's not that long ago. And I'm like, that's a long time ago. It was 24 years ago.
Wow.
And if you know anything about what was going on in music, so I started my first band in late 96, early 97. We made a run at it, had some successes. So, that was really the late 90s was the kind of the burgeoning of the internet and people actually interacting on the internet. And so this is a fun trivia fact. My band 141, numbers were really big in the late 90s, was the first band to win the internet Sony Battle of the Bands in 1997. And we thought something was going to happen with that. We got kind of a developmental deal to go back in the studio and do a few songs, and it never really panned out. I'll give you the condensed version, otherwise people are going to be bored. But anyway, going into the 2000s, I was in two more bands, and that's where some of those things happened. You talked about the indie deals in Japan and England, but if you also know what was going on in music in the 2000s, what did we have in the early 2000s? MP3s. What did we have in the late first decade of the 2000s? Streaming started happening. And what we saw as musicians was we were taught our whole lives that, you get a record deal, they'll give you some front money, you develop a following, you try to get played on the radio, and then you go out there, and everything was based on CD sales and some tape sales. It was based on that music was a tangible thing. Yeah. Well, the first decade of the 2000s, I mean, you talk to most musicians, the rug got pulled out from underneath us. You had Napster, kids were trading songs that were now files that you could open like a Word document, and you didn't have to pay for them. And it was crazy as we strove and strove. Is that even a word? Strive? But I mean, we tried and had some successes, and got, on some television shows, got some of these indie deals, but it never got to the point where we could sustain it as a living. And so around 2009, 2010, I basically was just like, I hate music. And I don't think, probably for 2 years there, I did not want to listen to music, and I didn't play music because I was so cynical and jaded to the business models and this talent that I felt that I had, and I still feel that I have it, but it didn't materialize into these dreams that I had to do that as a living.
All right. Well, let me jump in there, man. First of all, I honor you for sharing some vulnerability. They say that in the world of leadership, vulnerability is a strength, and yet most of us grew up being told, "Don't cry, don't share your woes." And actually, if you interview most CEOs or the top leaders in companies, which I coach, I ask the question: is vulnerability a strength or weakness? And the answer is weakness. It's just unbelievable. So I honor you for sharing some of that first challenge. I got to tell you something, man. When you're talking, I don't know why I'm having these strange thoughts. I just had the flashback again to Charlie Pride, and Charlie Pride passed away.
Oh, I just saw that. Yep.
Yeah, Charlie Pride. For those who didn't know, I grew up with Charlie Pride because my mom listened to, who's still alive. My mom listened to Charlie Pride, the vinyl records, when I was a kid, and it's haunted me he passed away from COVID-19. So I guess we can date stamp this by mentioning a pandemic when we look back at it. But what a treasure. And so that's what I started thinking about when you were talking about this chapter of your story. All of a sudden, music is downloadable and free, and it's almost like in the hero's journey that I talk about. We have this moment where it's like the dark night of the soul. Some have it earlier in life, but others have it later. And I'll just be quick on this, where you feel so much pain and anger or frustration, you go from the known world into this unknown world on a journey to seek and discover, what's the real meaning and purpose of your life. So there you were, and as I'll give it back to you, on this, you you came out of the womb, and your mom used to sing to you. She was a talented singer. You got into music, man. Battle of the Bands, 1977. You guys won 141.
97.
97. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that's right. And band 141, I don't know what that means, but backwards it's the same thing, so it's kind of cool. and what they call it, a palindrome.
Yes.
But then all of a sudden, you've just told us, maybe it's a teaching moment, so tell us why you hated music. So what did you do to go discover, and what did you discover to get back where you really belong?
Well, it's interesting. I listened to a lot of talk radio when I would be driving to my day job, which I hated. I love the people. So if any of you are watching this from my day job, I love you. It just wasn't my passion. And yeah, I would, either listen to audiobooks or listen to talk radio and interviews and things like that. I was so cynical and jaded to perceiving that this passion of mine had kind of like fallen by the wayside and it was not going to materialize, that I just didn't want to be around it or do it. But what happens is, and I guess this can happen with, sports people or writers or CEOs. Reading your book, I think there are a lot of uniformities and parallels in the human struggle, regardless of what sphere of life you're in or vocation or whatever. But anyway, slowly what happens is, just like anything, they say time heals all wounds, time kind of dissolves the pain. So after a while, I start listening to songs that I like again. I started playing trumpet again, which I hadn't played in 15 years. I had kind of given that up and was playing guitar and bass and singing lead, but I had played trumpet all through school, and it was not related to the indie rock scene, right? So I started part-time teaching with a friend of mine who gave me an amazing opportunity. And along that same time, and this kind of segs into the Happy Racers, which I'm doing now. You talked about, I'm in a kids family rock band. The drummer in that band is the drummer from my two bands in the early 2000s. And the main singer and main songwriter in that band is his brother-in-law and now a good friend of mine. And we all, though slightly different experiences, created this band for kids out of kind of that, we're going to create music for kids and for families, and there's none of this pretense and, we're too cool and have to wear the right stuff and whatever else. And so, that was one of the things that was happening as well. And then I had more time during the days, and I had always thought, I want to write a children's book. And then that's the whole genesis of the Pippin books.
Well, that's amazing. So we'll dive right into Pippin in a moment, but I'm thinking about what you just said. Maybe it's another teaching moment here, Layne. By the way, the last name Ihde, what part of the world is your heritage?
It's actually German. And funny story, our grandmother would tell us that we were German, and every time we would meet German people, just like anyone does with whatever their perceived heritage is, we'd ask people and we'd show them it and say it, and they'd be like, that's not German. Well, what we found out was we were talking to, every time we had talked to somebody, it was somebody from Bavaria, which is the southern part. My brother took German and then found a professor that had the same last name. He's like, no, it's because you're from the north. You're from Hamburg. So I did a Google search in the the Google.de or whatever it was, the white pages, and there were Ihdes. I think that's how they pronounce it. Everywhere there was like dentists and lawyers, and so it's one of my goals to get over there into the Hamburg area. It's evidently a name that's very prevalent right along the border of Denmark and Germany.
Wow. Oh, that's pretty amazing. I remember growing up and there was a German band. I can't remember the name. There's a line in it that always stands out, 99 balloons or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So another connection to music. My brother-in-law, his name is Axel, and I know the culture a bit. It's funny, I'm doing a side hustle now, waiting tables at a restaurant, helping a friend turn it around just to deal with my post-concussion syndrome. And we have 40 beers on tap, and man, all the Germans who come in, they know their beers. In fact, they're telling me about beer. But I'm going to go back to that thing you said, because the hero's journey we talk about is, at what point in our life do we seek to discover the true meaning? Point blank question, just answer it with one or two words. Were you good in school, or did you get bored? Or
yes, yes, I was good in school, but I did not try very hard. And that's something that bugs me. That's way more than two words. Sorry.
That's all right. Well, you're doing it again. I asked you at the beginning, tell me one thing we don't know, and the guy's going like, okay, I know another one. I love you already, man. So I'm going to tell you something, because in my coaching work, I do teach personality science. That's unique. I look at motive. You read my book. But I honored you for saying that, because and my stepson is older now. When I married my wife 25 years ago, I met him. Dr. Hartman, who taught me this science, you would be considered someone with a motive of fun. And a lot of creative people with the motive of fun, meaning they live in the moment, they live to experience things and they don't think far ahead or back. But they're saying now in universities and schools that they're starting to realize you have to teach these children differently. You can't tell them to sit at a desk and do the same thing over and over again, because they get bored. And then when I look at some other literature I've seen about the world is run, I think one of your presidents said the world is run by C students. And you look at, Facebook, Zuckerberg dropped out of school. He went back later. You look at Albert Einstein was a dropout. You look at some of the people who are running some of the biggest companies in the world, Layne, they weren't stupid. They went back and got post-secondary later, but they had this creative gene, this passion, and something they had to do. So it's good to know about the school connection. Did you face anywhere in your lifeline from people close to you who influenced you, anybody being against your passion of music or perhaps not supporting it? Did you have any of that?
No, and that's one of the amazing things. Talking about the dark period, and I say that loosely because I know so many. I'm just reading your book. Like sometimes I feel ridiculous telling people that, I've suffered or, gone through tough things, because so many more people have gone through things that are just, astounding. I can't believe, you're still walking around and whatnot. But my mother and father, which I guess those are the first ones close to you, both of them. I want to major in music. A lot of times parents will be like, well, why don't you get a minor in business? And then I got out of college and I'm like, hey, I want to move to Nashville and pursue my dreams of being in a rock band. They were like, go for it. And so, maybe my grandmother and some of my, aunts or something were kind of like, well, you better have a backup plan. But I am very, very fortunate that my immediate family has been and always has been super supportive. When I diverged into this book thing, they've just been so supportive. So it's ridiculous.
All right, and I'm going to make a statement here. You don't have a backup plan, but you must have a backup band.
Oh, I have tons of them, and I play in tons of them.
All right, when we get together one day, you'll have to teach me how to play guitar. I play guitar. I've been doing it just on the side. I'm not that great. But going back into the story now, so here we are, and now we're at this chapter. Why then do you believe that you seem to have found your tribe, and it's something in the thread of children? There's this new writing a children's book. There's this performing in the Happy Racers. What is it that you had in yourself a passion, and what are you trying to do with that to help children? What is it that drives you?
You know, this is going to sound, silly or just cliche. I don't know if it's the right word, because this would be most people's, oh, that makes sense. But Mr. Rogers, um, I grew up watching Mr. Rogers and shows like Sesame Street and Electric Company, and but Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood specifically. And then as I got older, to watch documentaries on him and hear him speak about what his goals and his mission were. And it kind of culminated, and get the chills just thinking about it. I don't know if you've ever seen the recording of him, and I can't remember the year. It was either the late 60s or early 70s. He went before a Senate subcommittee because the government was wondering, why should we give money to public television?
Yeah.
And he gives this just, in his soft-spoken way, this speech, and I don't think it was written. He just spoke from his heart. And one of the lines will always stick with me. He said something, and I'm paraphrasing. He said something about the space between an adult's mouth and a child's ear is sacred ground. And I'm getting chills again just saying it.
Yeah.
And this ties in with your story too, Tom. It's that responsibility from those of us that are older now and using our prefrontal cortex, as we talked about via email earlier today, have a responsibility for those younger kids growing up and what they're hearing and the type of reinforcement they're getting and the love they're getting. And that underpins basically everything I'm doing, even though I have a heck of a lot of fun writing silly stories about cats and playing music for kids.
Okay. So I wrote down a couple more things here. You said the shows so for the record, mine were Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, Mr. Dress Up, Friendly Giant. And that was just the top few. But I was a kid who would escape in these things because I was trying to escape and be happy in this new world. I was portraying my life through somebody else's life. So if I found your book, Pippin No Drippin' or Pippin No Lickin', the first one, which we'll get into in a minute, that would have been something when I was a kid that I would have taken to bed with me. I would have read, and would have been for the purpose of blocking out the noise in my house and all the scary things going on. And I really believe, now that you've told us a lot of this story, man, that's your hero's journey. You had the ability to take something, a gift you had in yourself. Now I'm projecting on you here, so it's my show. I can say this to you. You had the ability to take a gift of the talent you have. You had parents who supported it. And note to self, that doesn't happen to every child in the world.
I realize that. Mm-hmm.
And then go out into the world and begin your career in music. But you got angry one day, and I think you weren't angry just at the fact that the music industry was starting to take advantage of musicians. You actually had a calling deep inside that you hadn't fulfilled yet, and it was to go and find this tribe of kids. Because I can tell you, what you just said blew my mind, man. Because you are a world changer. That by writing this book and by doing what you're doing with the Happy Racers, every child who looks at that is going to grow up, because at their ages, young ages, they don't have use of a rational brain. So everything put in them that's a lie or not true will shape how they feel about themselves. When I read Pippin No Drippin', it was basically an amazing story of this cat, which we'll meet, that it was like, it's raining outside and I don't have anything to do. And he discovered the magic of, it's okay. We'll find something you can do inside that doesn't involve social media and computers and devices. That is a message that is not heard today. Kids, I was reading something on the brain development of children and how by just using social media devices, they don't get enough rest. Their brains, which means short-term memory, things they get in their short-term memory actually doesn't deposit in long-term memory. There's so much to this. So I know I'm getting excited, man, because when I find a guest that I go, that's your classic hero's journey story, you are giving something to the world now. So let's get into that. There was this cat in a couple books. Tell us about that.
So he's actually the protagonist of the book series, he looks like this cute little lovable cat,
Keep
is actually based on a
it up
real
there.
cat.
Hold it up.
There. Okay.
I'll get you full screen. All right. Turn it over to. Turn the back cover. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
He's actually based on a cat that I used to live with about 10 years ago named Pippin. And I've always had black cats. Originally it was my parents that had a black cat, but for some reason I've just gravitated to them. And so I had the real Pippin the cat in the first decade of the 2000s. And he was just, any cat owner will tell you, cats are all a little bit neurotic. They're so quirky, and every one of them has a different personality, just like humans do. And he actually had some dog-like traits. It was funny. I would be outside, and he could be in the tree line in the little woods near our house, and I could just call him Pippin. He'd just come tearing across the yard and jump on me and just want me to play with him. And, of course, a very animalistic trait, dogs or cats included, is when you were sick, he'd come get on me and curl up next to me. And he actually liked to go out when it was lightly snowing or raining, which was weird because most cats hate water getting on their fur. But I had just thought, even back then, talking about Mr. Rogers, and that also connects with children's literature. I'm a huge Dr. Seuss fan, Roald Dahl. I mean, you name it. So I'd always wanted to write a children's book, and I thought, what could be easy thematic material? I'm like, oh, Pippin the cat. He's lovable. I know him. It's going to be very easy to write him as an anthropomorphized 6 or 7 year old child that lives in a house, has parents, kind of like the Berenstain Bears. They're humanized. And he goes to an elementary school and he gets into trouble, or he has problems that he needs to solve. And that was the genesis of Pippin.
That's amazing. And back to what I think about with your books is you're teaching through these books. There's a lot you're teaching to children. I think this book is age 4 to 8, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the demographic. But it's amazing. I actually just had a friend of mine I've had a lot of parents send me pictures of their early toddlers because the illustrations were done in such a way, even though the kids can't read yet, they just gravitate towards Pippin.
Yeah. It's a likable image. You had a puppet there you were showing me before that you held up. Can you hold that up on screen?
Well, Tom, you can't tell a cat what to do. You want to come on? Are you sure? Yeah, I don't want to tell you what to do. Okay. He said he's cool with it, so let's get him up here. Hey, Tom, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going good. I'm starting to talk like you. Going good. Nice to meet you, Pippin.
Well, I was just playing some Nintendo Switch on my little handheld, but Layne said that you wanted to see me, so I just thought I'd come up and say hi.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. What do you think of Layne?
He's really cool. I mean, he brought me into existence, so I kind of have to.
Oh, you're too nice, Pip.
That is sweet.
Well, are you in the middle of a game? Do you want to go back to your game?
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Bye, Tom. It was nice meeting you.
Bye, Pippin. And thank you, Pippin, because I'm getting a couple books signed for my granddaughter. And
yes, you are.
Just a little secret, Mr. Layne. I'm putting one on my shelf because that's part of my collection. So the book, what's the title of the book again?
So the second book is Pippin No Drippin'. And I try to use that. It's not quite alliteration because you're not starting the same with every letter, but I love something that I call, and I've talked to some other authors, called mouthfeel. When there are some words that are just, I'm actually grabbing the copy of the first book, Pippin No Lickin. Now that doesn't rhyme. Pippin and Lickin don't rhyme, but there's something about how your mouth, Pippin No Lickin, Pippin. Yeah. It's fun, and it's just there are things that are ridiculous that you can do with children's books and picture books that you cannot do with regular prose or regular, writing for older people, and it's just fantastic.
Well, it is, and you're a talented guy. December 22nd, 2020, everybody, is when the book officially releases. We'll get Layne to tell us at the end of this. We're wrapping up pretty soon where you can get a hold of that. I saw this fun video you did. It's like a teaser. I sent it to my wife, and her personality is a lot like yours. She's in the moment, fun, and then she sent it to our granddaughter. Were you rapping in that or something, or you were doing a little song there?
Yes. So I've been rapping and beatboxing since the 80s. Me and my buddies used to do it in the bathroom at high school. But between classes, I don't know if this is going to blow the microphone. But we've always messed around doing that stuff. So what I did was,
that's cool.
The trick with marketing for children's books, and it's still something I'm trying to figure out, is that unlike, you have a book and it's going to be an adult, like your end user is the one that you're marketing to. For me, I'm marketing to the parents because the little kids can't buy their own books, and then they're buying it for the little kids. The kids have to ultimately love it and have all those feels like you were talking about. The parent has to see that they're having those feels. So anyway, not to bore you, I was like, what can I do for this book launch to draw parents in that maybe were kids in the 80s and 90s? And so I used the theme song for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with Will Smith. And I just used a karaoke track and I chopped it up, and then I rewrote the lyrics to be about Pippin No Drippin'. And then I used to actually be, I'm all over the map. I used to be in some hip hop dance groups in the 90s. Yeah. And so those dancers that you see in the background, that's just me superimposed on the, but I mean, it seems to be getting some good traction, and people think it's fun, and it's causing them to think Pippin, Pippin, no right. Drippin'.
I was just going to put you on the spot, give us a couple lines. So there it was.
Yeah. That's the chorus. So how does it start? In West Kittendelphia, born and raised, when it rained, he got stuck inside most of his days, staring out the window while bored in his house, not even any interest in chasing the mouse. When something cool caught his eye in a blink, started his returning, and it made him think. He got one big idea, and his mama went, hey, she said, you're moving and you're grooving in a positive way. Pippin, no
Pippin, no dripping. I was going to get you.
You got it.
That is so good. So everybody, you got to go out. Layne will tell us at the end how you can find that video. But with your permission, when we produce the YouTube premiere, if you want it,
definitely,
we will put it in here. But have that blow the doors off. I want to tell the audience something here about how gifted Layne is, not just by what you've heard today. And by the way, if you joined us, we're towards the end of the interview. Come back, watch it again. It'll be produced with exactly as it is, but listen to the whole story, because there's a reason why he's doing what he's doing. I was just going to say black cats stand out. They're different in the business world. If you've ever heard the term black swan, a black swan is a once in a lifetime event where a company quietly starts organizing to take out an industry. And when you look at Blockbuster Video, you look at technology that took out the video industry, right? Streaming. And so a black swan is generally a company that comes and does something and nobody sees it when it's coming. Man, I'm starting to hear more and more of your soul. Black cat, you are different. You want to be different. You stand up, be different, but you're not doing it to get attention. You're doing it to impact children. You're doing it to teach them things that you know are going to help them in the world, which many people don't know. And pretty amazing stuff. Last thing I want to do is honor you with a few words. I write these down as I'm talking to you. Yes, I can write. And they're leadership words. So here they are. The first one is creativity. Man, you are creativity. There's no question about it. Fun. I can't help but smile and feel good when I saw that video. When I read the book today, it's just so much fun. Makes me feel so good. Love, man. I love you and your story, but you are love. It comes out of you because you're doing something for others. And passion. Got to be there's energy. Come on steroids. Passion. So we're going to induct you with an award today as we wrap up. I do this now online so people can see it. So behind me, you see a screensaver. And today we're inducting you into the Quiet Warrior Tribe. Now, when I started my show, I wanted to have an award which would connect under 50 people a year in a planet of 80 billion to each other by holding this. It's called a challenge coin, which you may know about. They started in World War I, and people carried them to commit to each other for some purpose. I have now Quiet Warriors in 7 or 8 countries carrying them. So by receiving it, you commit to keeping up action with this passion and purpose you have in serving others. And so welcome to the Quiet Warriors. It's an honor to give this to you, and hopefully I can see you one day face to face.
Man, I am humbled, and I accept it gratefully. And yeah, I want to see you face to face because I want to eat some of this food that I see you cooking on Facebook all the time.
I will be
Renaissance man here. I mean,
I'll be going into the kitchen and cooking a cat dish. We'll call it Pippin or something. So much fun. Everybody, Pippin No Lickin, the first book, Pippin No Drippin, the second book, The Happy Racers, the band, and the man, Layne Ihde, who I finally know how to pronounce his last name. This is somebody who's on the move, and wanted to say that in the author community, I'm an author and a literary scout. It is extremely hard to get a children's book published. And so congratulations, man. You just put another success on your sheet. So on that note, where do we get a hold of you and all your body of work in the book?
Okay, well, I was talking to my wife about this the other day. I think I should have spelled my name phonetically so that people could find me, but you're seeing on the screen right now that Layne Ihde. It looks like Layne Ihde. You really do a search on that anywhere in Google. So my website is just simply Layne Ihde, no spaces or underscore or anything, .com. My Facebook is just facebook.com/Layne Ihde. And then Twitter is just @Layne Ihde. And then the two newer ones, it's a slight departure, but if you're on Instagram, it's Layne I, which is just the first initial of my last name, and then the number 7, which is my soccer number. So @Layne I7. And then if you're on TikTok, oh, crazy kids, I've actually started TikToking, and I'm @Layne I7 on TikTok as well. So who knows how well that's going to go, but I'm just trying to keep up with the kids. So
amazing. Well, thank you, everybody. I encourage you to go and find this guy with the big smile and the positive attitude. Find his book, Pippin No Drippin, the one that's coming out December 22nd. I wrote a 5-star review and posted it online. Please find it. You're welcome. And this is how new authors get known, and I'd like you to do that. Also, find the show on your favorite podcast channel and give it a rating so that we can honor Layne for his work. And we talked about Mr. Rogers. I forgot to ask you, did you see the movie Mr. Rogers with Tom Hanks?
That's people are amazed that I haven't. I have not seen the movie, but there was a documentary that came out right before the movie came out, which was actually him, that I did see. And I still have to see the movie because I hear he did a wonderful job.
He did. And everybody, the reason why I brought that up, and I'm sorry, I had to throw it out there, that when I think about the connections kids had to Mr. Rogers, he covered up that part of the story, but he was sort of an abused, traumatized kid. And so through his work on his show, he brought key messages to children of hope. And in the movie, it goes deep into, he found this one person who was totally broken, this adult, and he hung out. This guy was a train wreck and said something that if I was Mr. Rogers, I'd say, I never want to talk to you again, buddy. But Mr. Rogers went out of his way to find this guy and make a relationship. And at the end, this is what his soul was about. He said, the reason why I'm helping you is because I understand who you are. And so on that note, my friend, Layne Ihde, I understand who you are. We're connected in so many ways. Layne Ihde made me think about the Ihde Gourmet, the name, and I'm a chef, so I cook gourmet food. So there's another connection we have. I'm going to sign off and say, live that life of passion, live the life you deserve and desire, everybody. And like you've heard from Layne Ihde today, never stop doing something to serve your tribe. Thanks, Layne, for being here. We'll talk to you.
Thank you so much, Tom. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca